All right, so we have Chris Hankins here with Mission Support and my friend Andy with eTeams, and we're just going to have a little conversation about what we're doing with our Equip event coming up and really how Mission Support and eTeams formed this partnership to even do Equip events in the first place. So, Andy, why don't you share a little bit about what eTeams is, and then we can talk about kind of how we became brothers from another mother.
Yeah. Well, so the eTeam was really just is birthed out of just a heart for the church that some construction gentlemen who I met started in Virginia and kind of come into North Carolina is actually where I'm from, still born and raised in North Carolina. And so it was just came out of a heart that a construction company had for the church and really wasn't sure what was going to happen. And it's eTeam, the E kind of came from because it was Evans Construction. And so we were like, hey, what do we call this little ministry thing? And early on it was just, hey, I'm from North Carolina. We want you to come up here to Virginia. And we have a heart for the church. We're not sure what value we can bring to them outside of building a building, but they see us as a construction company, white pickup truck with a ladder coming to steal their money. But they were so much, more than that. And so they really just said, hey, we want to hire you just to go and sit down with pastors. And just listen. And so being from out of state coming in, and I would go and kind of meet with pastors and just say, hey, this is who I am. I'm a creative worship director. Had an opportunity to lead worship of churches and develop teams for 20 some years. And I'm just here. Tell me some of the things you're facing in ministry. And being from out of state, they just kind of just unloaded. And so it was really it was a sweet time. And every one of them, when I said, hey, please let me know when you're back in town because I want to know. And it just a lot of coffee, a lot of lunches that were being paid just to listen and pray and love on people. And about 6 months into that, I was like, hey, there's got to be something more to this. God, what are you doing? And so we committed just to fast and pray over a few weeks to say, what do you have? And the eTeam was developed. And early on, searching for names and all of that because we wanted to call it something. The E was kind of stolen from Evans, but we knew that we didn't want to kind of keep it that close in relationship. And so the E started taking shape and meaning of, engaging, sitting down with pastors, really understanding the ministry and the unique call that God has placed on their life. And of course, you got equip and educate, and we want to come alongside. And that's kind of where our partnership is kind of taken off with the equip events, is just equipping, ministry leaders and staffs and volunteers and things. And then, and then power is kind of one we throw around too. But at the end of the day, it's really just to kind of come along and encourage churches any way we can.
Well, I think eTeams is such a unique story because your salary is funded by a construction company that has a heart for churches and pastors, which means you're able to sit down with pastors and kind of help, kind of serve in that coach consulting role, and you literally want nothing from them.
Right.
And I think it's so rare for a pastor to be able to sit down with someone who is coaching, investing in them, and to know that this person has nothing to gain except to see the kingdom grow and to see our church succeed because they love us. And so I think you provide a really safe space for a lot of pastors that really need it. So, I'm a huge fan of what you guys are doing.
Well, appreciate that, and thank you. It's interesting because everyone's always like, well, what's in it for you? Like,
what's the catch?
They quite don't understand, like, really? Are you really just trying to sell me on something, or what is it? And that's the biggest challenge and hurdle that I face, is getting over that.
Yeah.
I sat down with a pastor the other day in Danville, Virginia, and I was a referral from someone he trusted. And I just asked him like an hour into it, and I was like, hey, I want to know exactly what you thought when I emailed you. And he was like, honestly, I thought you were going to come and sell me something. And I was like, well, what do you think now? And he's like, completely opposite of what I was thinking before. And so that is a hurdle I face, but it is. And it's a unique story, right? And so two construction companies are literally paying for our team and, all this expenses to go around and provide these needs for churches. And the only thing we really ask, and it's not really much of an ask in return, is, hey, if you're expanding or you're building or renovating or somebody that's doing that, why wouldn't you consider these guys who have their ministry heart first?
Yeah.
And that's really what it is. And so part of in developing a lot of that is start doing some of these workshop mini conferences, if you will, because and you're a lead pastor as well, and have been, and leading multiple campuses and leading a lot of teams, and so your staff gains a lot from conferences, but that doesn't always necessarily carry over into some of your volunteers and some of these people, because you can't take 30, 40, 50 people with some of the what it costs to some of these bigger conferences. And I just remember sitting in some of those conferences often and just thinking, man, I wish this person was here or this person was here. And it was always hard for me to come back and communicate exactly the experience that I felt being in the room with some of these great leaders that are pouring into me back to my team. And so initially when we started talking about what are some things that we can do to really bring value to churches, is that's to have these little small workshops, these little mini conferences, and keep the cost somewhat low. So, and almost it's a break even, right? I mean, we talked about eTeam we're not trying to, it's not an organization that you're going to be throwing money at us and we're just, continue to grow and get bigger. No, these are funded by construction companies that we don't want to send a bill to a church. And so our heart was for these events to really provide a lot of value that you can bring multiple people to. And so our goal is just to be a break even. And so usually those are, hour-long events and several-hour events, and sometimes 2 days, but most of the time it's in 1 day. And we provide lunch. And so really what you're paying in is really just
covering costs. Yeah.
And so when I met you with Carolina Movement initially, and then we started expanding with mission support, you guys have taken that to a whole nother level, taken some of those early concepts that we had, and you guys have actually put birthed a lot of life into it from the earlier years, specifically months right before COVID.
Yeah, better together, man.
Was our first one.
Yeah.
Right. And so since then, it's kind of been challenging that you guys have just elevated. So.
Well, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, we have a unique perspective, unique kind of vantage point. So we planted a church in 2010, went multi-site. At one point we had 15 campuses. And so a lot of what we would do was we had a central services team that helped to do, bookkeeping and payroll and expenses and video and graphics. And really one of our pitches to campus pastors was to say, hey, you can come and teach, focus on, sharing the gospel, focus on making disciples. And man, we'll help with a lot of that operation stuff.
Yeah.
So you don't have to. And I think that was really attractive early on. And then we started planting churches with Carolina Movement in 2017 and really seeing, hey, these church planters have these exact same needs, right? It's they're planting a church, they're trying to raise money, and they're they went to seminary to share the gospel, make disciples, point people to Jesus, not to do bookkeeping and payroll and graphic design and websites and SEO and strategic planning. And so, but their lack of knowledge in those things were really hurting their ability to grow their church and to reach their community. And so we said, hey, what if we took the things we've been doing for these campuses for the last 10 years and helped these churches that we're helping to plant? And that was really how mission support was born. Similarly, out of this, this desire to help and support the churches in the areas that they weren't called or passionate about. We don't want them to have to go and get an MBA to be able to lead their church. And so, man, that heart to come in and support and equip. And I think that's where that idea of equip events came was, hey, let's have a worship event to equip your worship leaders, your volunteers. Let's have an operations event to equip your bookkeepers, your executive pastors, finance people. Let's have a leadership equip event to, equip your board, your lead pastor, your executive pastor on, how do you clarify, your vision? How do you move the ball forward? How do you get from what's in your mind, what's in your heart that you're dreaming of to actually be reality? I mean, because we're talking with, both of us are talking with pastors every week. And I think that are frustrated that they can't seem to get what's in their mind, their dreaming, what's in their heart, into reality. And a lot of times I think it is simply the need to be equipped in some of these different areas that makes that difference,
Well, and that's why I think the partnership works so well. Early on, like I was saying in the early days of figuring out where's the value for the eTeam, and part of that was going from this construction company of obviously they provide a great service for the needs if a church is building, but expanding on that, because a lot of challenges, a lot of needs. One of the questions I ask a lot of pastors is, hey, if you can change one thing about the church today, what would it be? And that was just kind of a unveiling of, hey, here's a challenge. And so I would take that, and in many ways I was just a connector. So I was trying to find organizations like Mission Support and others who provided great needs and great services for churches that had a heart for the church. And that's why I love, like when I met you and I was hearing more about Mission Support, because you guys offer so many things. You guys actually by partnering with you guys and doing the things we're doing together, you're actually freeing me up to do more ministry type of work.
Man, I love
instead
that.
of finding all these other companies. You guys are a one-stop shop that can kind of provide. I know that's kind of some of you older people that are watching this, you remember that. That's kind of an outdated term now, but I was told that by a pastor, by the way.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, you guys are like, you're that one communication that can provide many things at a high level for churches. And so like, you really freed me up to now get back truly to what the eTeam was kind of somewhat designed for in the early days of just getting in on the ground with their teams, doing ministry. And so now, instead of connecting, hey, you got to reach out to this person, this person, this person, this person, it's really, hey, you got to reach out to Mission Support.
Yeah,
they can provide all these needs for you, and they're going to do a great job. So.
Well, I mean, and we have the same heart. I mean, am a pastor at a church. Everyone on our Mission Support team has been, on staff, served in a local church. And so like the heart really is to support the church to carry out her mission.
Yeah.
And so nothing makes us more excited, right? When we see a church that is thriving and growing, reaching their community, like that's why we do what we do.
Yeah, that's good. Well, and so let's talk a little bit. I want to kind of now ask you, because we talked about some of those little workshop type things. We started with the worship one. We went to the financial side of things. I can't remember the exact title of that.
Operations. Yeah.
We've talked about so many to provide for churches, which leads us actually to the next one in October, the organizational leadership. And so share a little bit, because I believe you came up with that. Hey, this would be a great thing to speak into.
Yeah, this one is the one that is near and dear to my heart, for sure. Yeah,
share a little bit about like what's going to happen, in October. Our next one, I think it's October 16th or 18th, 17th. October 17th.
Yeah,
there it is. Sorry,
from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m.
There you go. Yeah, so October 17th, because that's near and dear to your heart. I'm a creative arts guy. I'm that creative that really don't think about some of that stuff when it gets outside of team building from my perspective. So share the importance and what it means for you and how excited you are about sharing and the people that are going to be coming sharing around that topic.
Yeah, so, I mean, I would describe myself as a kingdom dreamer, right? And so I'm always thinking 5-10 years in the future, just naturally, and dreaming about what could be. And I think that I get really excited of having a God-sized dream, praying, spending time with God. I truly believe that, like Ephesians 2:10, that we're saved by grace through faith so that we can do the good works that God has prepared in advance. And so I believe every pastor, every church, God has put these dreams, these visions, that God has a purpose, a unique purpose for them in their community. And I know for me, I have those. And to see that go from being an idea, to see it going from being a dream to a reality, like that is what gets me fired up. Yeah. And so I love to do that. Like that is the thing that I would say I'm the most geared to, wired to. And I know that, but there's a lot of pastors that, they lean more towards the teaching side. I mean, they love to teach, they love to preach, they love to disciple, they love to pastor, they love to counsel. And so, but they still have a dream. Yeah. They still have something that God has put in their heart. But as far as how do we execute that? How do we come up with a strategic plan? Yeah. How do we put steps in place? How do we rally our team? How do we communicate that vision? How do we clarify that vision? Those are the things that they really need help in being equipped to do. And we've had the privilege to do that in multiple times in multiple contexts, multiple organizations, church, Carolina Movement, Mission Support. Yeah. And so at different campuses, churches we've helped to plant. And so our goal, I think, in this event is to bring in great speakers from across the state who are really wired with this kind of organizational leadership in mind to help, how do you unify your team? How do you clarify your vision?
Yeah.
How do you grow and get better as a church? What are the things that you need to improve on, and really learn to get to the point where you're craving feedback? Right? You're not afraid to say, hey, these are areas that we have room to grow in.
Yeah.
And then how do you put together a plan to get to where God is calling you to be?
Yeah, that's good.
And so I think that there's this idea of like the tyranny of the urgent. There's always something coming. There's always a fire to put out. There's always, another sermon to prepare.
Yeah.
But if, we don't take time to really clarify where are we going and what are the steps that we need to get there, and that we're going to prioritize doing the things that we need to do to get where God is calling us to go, then most likely you'll never get there.
Yeah.
And so that's our heart and that's our desire, to really equip churches to get where God wants them to be.
Yeah.
And so I think that we're going to really be able to provide some of that really valuable equiping at this event in October.
Well, I remember you saying organizational leadership at first, and obviously being a creative, I didn't get too excited about that. But hearing you share more and some of the exercises that we were doing, and you unveiling more of the vision behind this, I really started to get excited. And I started immediately thinking about churches and pastors, like many of them, that could really benefit for this. So, I can't be more excited for the events that's coming up.
Well, I think there's a lot of leadership events, and when you say leadership, what you mean is how can I grow in my individual leadership? Mm-hmm. But the reality is, like, church is a family, church is a team. Yeah, like there's no one man church, and so the idea that, hey, how can we help us as a family of believers get where God wants us to be? Really, that's what that organizational leadership, not just how can I achieve my dreams or get where I want to go or build my career, but how can we help our church family get where God wants us to go? Yeah,
that's good. Yeah, that's good. So who do you think this event is for? When I think of this, I think of your executive level. But then I also think about not necessarily your executive level team, your lead pastor, your executive level pastors, and your leaders, but maybe even some of those next tier or third tier leaders as well could really benefit from this. Who do you think this event is for? Who's it targeted?
Yeah, so I think when you say, executive level leader, I think maybe you immediately think executive pastor, but really what you mean by that is who are the people who have influence over the entire church or your entire nonprofit. So, lead pastor, executive pastor, if you're a nonprofit, executive director, your board, but also thinking who are the people you're training. We love talking about internships, residencies, and so doing pastor, assistant pastors who want to become lead pastors. And so I think this is incredible training for them of, okay, right now maybe I'm thinking about just my ministry. What does it look like to think about the church as a whole? Yeah. And how we lead the church as a whole, and how we lead people in our church to a destination that God is calling us to go to. So I would say anybody who is currently helping to lead the whole church or the whole organization, or those people that you're training to be those future leaders.
Yeah, that's good. I can even see it being a value too for like even your children's directors, your worship leaders, your production directors, because they are, in a sense, they're carrying out a vision, right? Yeah. And sometimes I think, honestly, they're going to get some value out of there. Just hearing some of the principles that are going to be shared, that they can actually come back or take it back to their teams as far as development and clarifying something and seeing it through.
We talk about like start with the why.
Yep.
And so I think a lot of times, we can come back and say, hey, here's where we're going as a church, and the people on our staff, they don't, well, why are we doing this? Yeah. Why would we want a strategic plan? Why would we, want to improve in these areas? Yeah. And so I think understanding some of the why behind what we're doing as a larger church, I think does help to unify the team for sure.
Yeah, that's good.
So what would you say? What do you think this day is going to look like?
Well, I'm excited. You texted me a big name that's going to be at this event. So you have to come and find out who that is. No, you'll get some of the pieces on that. But no, I'm excited about the lineup. Some of the speakers that we have are truly high-level leaders that I've actually had an opportunity to hear too. And so I'm excited about the lineup. We're going to have multiple speakers that's going to be taking place. We're going to be doing some breakout type sessions. Yeah. So it's really going to feel like a conference that you would go to. Some of the ones, when I say conference, immediately what you're thinking of, it's going to be like that, but in one day.
Yeah, well, I think that's the key is that bite size, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So
Yep.
pretty much wherever you're at in North Carolina, you can leave at a reasonable hour and be home in time for dinner.
Yep.
And so we intentionally are letting out at 3 so that you can beat traffic on the way home. We're going to have lunch together. I think we're going to eat some Christian chicken
Yep.
from
Oh, yeah.
Chick-fil-A. So
Yep.
it's going to be great. And
Yep.
it'll be a great time also to meet people. It's going to be, casual. And really, I think you're going to leave equipped to
Yep.
be a better leader for your church, for your nonprofits.
You talked about multiple people from across the state coming.
Yeah.
So this one's going to be actually in Raleigh. So, I mean, how many churches are in and surrounding your area?
You can be
area?
in Charlotte in 2 hours,
Yep.
Greensboro in an hour and a half, hour.
Yep.
You can be, Greenville in 2 hours,
Yeah.
Coasting 2.5 hours. So you can, it's fairly central to North Carolina. It's definitely drivable in the day
Yeah.
for sure.
Good.
I think, for incredible content.
Yeah. So if someone is listening to this right now and they're interested in signing them and their teams, or maybe they know some pastors they want to invite as well, what's the easiest way to sign up for this event?
Yeah, super simple. missionsupport.com/equip. It's $49 until September 15th. It's a $39 per person if you bring a team of 3 or more. And really, that's our hope, is if you can bring a team.
Yeah.
I think you will get much more out of it leaving with that team. So, yeah, September 15th. After that, it goes up to $59 a person. So make sure you get your tickets soon. And then $39 per person if you bring a team of 3 or more.
Yeah, I don't think we said the location. We said it was in Raleigh.
Yeah,
but
Raleigh. It's at Vision RDU.
Yeah.
And so one of my really good friends, Jerome Gay, is
Yep.
going to be one of the speakers. He's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so they've agreed to let us host it there. So it's in North Raleigh, right off the major highway. So it's easy to get to, plenty of parking.
Plenty of parking.
Yeah.
There you go. As we close this thing out, I just want to thank everything you guys are doing as mission support. Just following back up with some of the people I've connected you guys with. They've been extremely excited to
Awesome.
partner with you guys, and you guys are providing great services for them. So thank you so much. And then also your team that you have, obviously with our team, they seem to be working really well together.
Yeah.
And just all the value you guys have brought us in getting these events off the ground. Couldn't thank you enough. So I really appreciate that. And thank you guys for giving us a few moments of your time. And we look forward to meeting you and some of your team members at the event on October 17th.
Yeah. See you in October.